Object removal within Davinci Resolve Studio, sponsored by NVIDIA. Yes, I did say Davinci Resolve Studio. Everything we're going to discuss in this video is limited to the paid studio version of Davinci Resolve only. So, what are we going to be talking about? We're going to take a look at two different tools. First up, we've got the Patch Replacer tool, which is super quick, simple, easy to use, often forgotten about, but does have some limitations. And then we're going to jump into the fancier Object Removal tool. It basically uses AI to try and figure out what you're replacing and then just does all of the work for you. It's pretty neat. Now, as with all of the neural engine Davinci Resolve functions, how fast it performs will depend on your GPU, and that's where this video's sponsor, NVIDIA, comes in. All of the latest 40 series of graphics cards by NVIDIA have dedicated AI cores called Tensor cores, which are designed specifically to accelerate AI tasks, just like object removal, in creative applications like Davinci Resolve, which means faster object removal, less dropped frames, access to things like magic masks, superscaling and speed warps in real time, and of course, faster rendering speeds. In fact, everything you're seeing within this video is being performed on my NVIDIA RTX 4080 GPU. And on top of that, as Blackmagic update Davinci Resolve, so do NVIDIA update their own graphics card drivers with dedicated studio drivers, which once again are designed specifically for creative applications like Davinci Resolve, which just keeps everything running super smooth and super fast. To find out more, click on the link down in the description below. Right, with that out of the way, let's look at the Patch Replacer tool. We're going to take this footage and then really quickly, and I mean quickly, get rid of that hot air balloon. Let me show you how easy it is. So here is our footage with our hot air balloon. Now, this is a pretty simple shot because there's no real movement in our object or within the camera. So it's super quick and easy to do. We can either do this on the edit page or the color page. I'm going to stick with edit just because it's quicker and easier. First things first, open up your effects library, come down to Open Effects, and then under the Resolve FX Revival area, you want to find the Patch Replacer, and then simply drop that on your footage on the timeline. Underneath your preview window, click on this little drop down and then select the Open Effects Overlay, and you'll get these two circles appear on screen. I like to think of these as your copy and your paste. And there's an arrow going from the copy to the paste to let you know which direction it's going. And all you do is you put the paste over the thing you want to get rid of, and then you put the copy where you want to copy from, and that's basically it. You can change the size of these if you want to by clicking on the little outsides. You can even change the shape, do that sort of stuff. And then if we just turn the overlay off by clicking on FX, we can hit play. And because there's so little movement or anything really in this video, that straight away has worked really quite well. If we give the footage a click, open our FX overlay once again, and then jump into the inspector, top right-hand corner, you can see you have your Patch Replacer controls within here. We can do some simple stuff like change the shape from a rectangle to an ellipse if we need to. We can change the amount of detail which is being copied across. We can also then mess with the variability and blur the edges and do all this sort of stuff just to kind of tweak it to get it looking exactly as we want it. But generally, other than the blurring the edges, it's all pretty straightforward. Once you've got it done, hit play, tweak the location, and it will work pretty well. Patch Replace. Super quick, easy, and as mentioned, most people kind of forget that it's there. So I just wanted to remind you, there you go. Sweet. Now let's take a look at the actual object removal tool, which we're going to use to try and get rid of this pesky little statue on this lawn. I also want to let you know at this point that object removal tool can't do miracles. It's pretty cool, it's pretty clever, does some funky stuff, but it's kind of designed to remove small things, remove imperfections, get something small out of your shot. It's not going to replace like me from this shot, for example. It's not that clever. It's just useful for doing small bits and bobs. So let's jump over and I'll show you how it works. Now this one you can't do from the edit page, so we need to jump over to the color page. And then from here, the first thing you need to do is to tell Resolve the thing you want to track. So I'm just going to use my mouse wheel to scroll in on this image here so we know what we're looking at. And then underneath the preview window, make sure that you have the power window selected. And then from this menu bar in the middle, you want to select this one here, which is your window tool. And then we need to select a window, which we're going to put around our subject. So I'm just going to use the ellipse, the circle, give that a click, and then it will appear on screen. And then we just literally use the controls on screen to select our thing. Now, you don't actually need to get this perfect at this point. All we're doing here is we're saying this is the thing. We set it up relatively roughly, and then we're going to do a track. So I'm going to go with something like that. Then we're going to jump over to this one here, which is the tracker, and then simply hit this icon here to do a forward and reverse track. And just like that, it's tracked our subject. So if we move this along on the playhead, you can see it's tracking as we go. Easy. Next, we just need to apply our object removal. So from the effects area, top right, you've got your big list here. We can either scroll down. I'm just going to search for object, grab the object removal and drop it directly on the same node, and nothing will happen because then we need to jump into these controls and do some stuff. Now at this point, it's really key to mention that there's no one size fits all for the object removal. Depending on your footage, as mentioned before, everything's going to differ. So I tend to just do a bit of trial and error, click on some things to see what works and what doesn't. And I have a bit of a process which I go through, which I'm going to show you now. But it's just to let you know that if what I show you doesn't work, you kind of have to click around and you should hopefully be able to figure something out. But it's a little bit of trial and error. However, the first thing you should always do is click this button, Scene Analysis. And we're just going to see what it does, first of all. So it's going to go along, and it's giving us a grey box. So if you're lucky, that will just work. But in my instance, it hasn't. And basically, it hasn't been able to find out what goes in this box. So what you need to do, scroll down until you see Clean Plate, and then just click Build Clean Plate. And then it will do a best guess at what goes in that box. Let's just toggle off the power window, hit play, and it looks pretty good, actually. It's not done too bad of a job. The color's changing, which we'll come back to in a moment, but the actual mask and the track all looks pretty good. What I would then tend to do, if you've got a bit of edging, I will actually go back to the mask. So we'll go back to the window, and then you might want to make that a little bit bigger, or you may want to just grab the little red circles, and then you can add a little bit of softness, and you can just sort of tweak that as it goes. So I'm going to go with something like that. That looks a little bit better. And then from within the object removal controls, again, in this example, all we're going to do is change this render blend mode. So linear basically means it's going to pick a color and it's going to stick with it, which is why it looks like the color's changing. It's actually everything else is changing around it. Where if we change the blend mode to adaptive and then hit play, it's going to be dark at the beginning and lighten up as we go. And actually that looks pretty good. Sweet. So that's kind of worked out the gate for us pretty well. Now, if you're struggling to get a decent result, something else you can change is the scene mode. So by default, it's set to boundary, and boundary will simply analyze the area surrounding the object. So it will look just outside of your tracking window to try and figure out what it needs to put within the mask. The alternative option, which I sometimes switch to, is the background mode. This actually analyzes the entire frame, the entire scene, except for what's in the mask, to try and figure out what it needs to put in there. And then there's the object mode, which is for analyzing an object that moves within the background. Like our statue on the lawn, it's moving with the background, unlike our lawnmower, for example, which is moving through it. However, using boundary worked perfectly well, so I stuck with that. Once you change them, you just have to do another quick scene analysis to see if it picks it up and works slightly better. Again, sorry, there's no rule of thumb for this. I'll generally use boundary initially. If that doesn't work, I'll try background, and if that doesn't work, then I'll try the object mode. So, next example, we've got these two cars driving along the beach next to the sea. And we're using this example because there's another thing which you can do, which I want to show you. So we're going to do the exact same thing. This time I'm going to grab the pen tool. So this one down here, it's actually called the curve. I call it the pen because it's easiest. It looks like a pen. So then we're just going to click around subject like so, making sure to get the shadow. Then we'll go to our tracker and we'll do the track. It's doing a pretty good job, tracking it all the way through. We'll grab our object removal, plonk that on there, scene analysis. Let's see what it does. And this time I didn't need to build my clean plate. Oh, I still will need to build a bit of a clean plate, but it's done a pretty good job most of the way. It's just got confused in two little bits, so we've got these grey areas. In that instance, all you do, once again, build clean plate, and that'll fill in the gaps. Let's get rid of our power window, and that's not doing too bad of a job at all. Now, the next thing I want to show you is this search range. So what's actually happening as this car's moving through the scene, Resolve, the AI, is looking ahead. So imagine it's looking over here to see what's coming up. And then it's trying to basically do a copy of that and put it here. Now, this search range defines how far ahead it's looking. And this is a really good, hopefully, visual indication of what's going on. If we increase the search range, it's going to be looking further ahead. So up here somewhere. And if we keep going, eventually you can see the car in front is starting to appear within our mask because we're looking 85 frames ahead. So we're looking right over here for what's coming up. So that's actually gone too far. If we brought this right down to 0, it's kind of looking exactly where it is. You kind of want the number to be as low as you can with a decent result. So actually about 17 seems to be working really well for me. And that looks pretty spot on. So hopefully you can see you kind of have to do things in different ways and tweak things as you go. I've got one more example, which is fairly straightforward, and then we're going to jump into something a little bit more fancy. Ooh. So this is very similar. We've got a little car driving along, drone shot once again, and we want to get rid of it. So let's just do the same thing. We're going to do a little pencil tool. Oh, I've done a terrible job on that, but there you go. It's a quick example. Then we're going to track, and hopefully this tracks, which it does. Object removal, drop that on there. Scene analysis, let's see what it does. So that's, again, not done too bad of a job at all. And I don't think I'm going to have to make a clean plate for that one. It's actually worked really well indeed. There you go, that one just kind of worked. So that's perfect. But that gives you an idea of sometimes things work, sometimes you'll need to grab a clean plate, sometimes it will half work and you'll need to grab a clean plate. It really does depend on the footage and the exact thing which is going on. So the next one I want to show you is this. So we've got this guy walking along, but there's this ugly thing on the wall we want to get rid of. Now this is a little bit more complicated because obviously he walks in front of it. So how do you do that? Well, we're actually going to combine the object removal with magic masks. Let's see if we can do this one. So here we go. Now we're going to have to do things slightly differently for this one, mainly because of the track. Because our guy is walking in front of it, we're going to have to track this in two parts. So what I tend to do, grab the point just before the subject walks in front of our object. So I'm going to go with right there. Then we're going to grab our window and we're just going to put this around this in the same way we did before. Then we'll go to our tracker. And at this point, we can track reverse. So we just want to track back a couple of frames. So we can track this all the way back, like so. Then we're going to come to the point where he walks in front of it, keep going and going and going until our object is back in clear view, like so. And then we're actually just going to manually put our mask back over our object. So we're going to do this bit manually. Before you do that though, within the tracker, change it from clip to frame. Clip means that if we move the tracker will be moved across the entire clip, which is not what we want. We want frame so we can essentially keyframe the location of our mask. So now we can just move this over there like so. And then while he's walking in front of it, we've kind of manually keyframed that to keep up. And then from this point here, we can track forwards. And now we've got a track that goes across the entirety of our clip like so. Simple. Grab our object removal. Smash that on there. Let's just hit scene analysis, see what it does. Is it going to do a good job? Guys, kind of trying. So now we'll go and we'll build a clean plate first just to see if that helps. So actually, it's trying. It's worked at the beginning, but then I think it's getting confused when the guy's walking over it. That's probably to do with our search range. So we could try and knock this right down. And that's getting much closer. Can we knock that down to 0? It's not quite going to work. It's working before he walks across and then it's getting a bit confused. So what I might tend to do here is go back up and change this scene mode. So it's still looking at the boundaries and I reckon it's probably just the boundaries that it's getting confused. So let's go to background instead. We'll do a scene analysis on that, see what we get. And that is looking pretty good. Goes a bit squiffy at the end, but we'll ignore that for now. We can finish that later. But that's kind of working. Let's turn off the power window. Yeah, that looks about right. We're looking at it, so it looks obvious. I may want to maybe go and clean up the mask. So I could jump back into the window. What you can do, quick tip, if you turn off the power window visual, you can still increase the softness by going to softness and then dragging that up. And you can actually see the difference it's going to make. You can also then change the size, the aspect, the pan, the tilt, move it around actually without the window on screen so you can actually see what you're doing. But I'm actually pretty happy with that. If you weren't looking for it, you probably wouldn't really notice. So now all we need to do is to get our man to walk in front of it. So I'm going to jump back over to the edit page. I'm going to do a duplicate of this clip by holding Alt or Option if you're on a Mac, dragging up to make a duplicate. We'll jump back over to the color page. We'll make sure we've got the one selected, the top one. If you don't see your little timeline down here, just click on timeline from the top right-hand corner. We'll reset this node because we don't need all of that stuff. We're going to right click on an empty space, add an alpha output, and drag our blue to our blue. And then we're going to do a magic mask. And I've made a whole video about magic masks very recently, so go check that one out if you don't know how to use magic masks. But we'll click on this one, magic mask, go to the point where he walks in front of it, so we can kind of get a good idea of how it's going to look. We'll do a little track on that, make it better. You can see some of it poking through, so maybe just blend that in a little bit. Then we'll track that forward and back. Go back to the edit page, we'll hit play. And we maybe want to tidy that up a tiny bit, but you get the idea. We've done an object removal and a magic mask. We've cleared that up. Job done. And there you go. There's a bit of an overview of the objects removal tool within Davinci Resolve. Hopefully you found this useful. Do let me know down in the comments below. And thank you once again to NVIDIA for sponsoring this video. Make sure to click the link in the description to find out more about all the good stuff NVIDIA are doing. Thanks for watching. Take it easy. I'll see you next time.